century, radio networks developed a wide range of new genres that capitalized on the live nature of radio broadcasting. And these genres were later incorporated into early network television, which achieved its highest ratings through the live coverage of events, particularly in the area of sports and politics and entertainment. Now, the social importance of network television was often described as its transformation of television audiences into a collective public that was able to share communal experiences in real time. And all the early television theories up until the mid-90s really emphasized liveness as the key quality of television. But beginning in the 80s, the major networks suffered a tremendous loss in ratings due to competition from cable channels and the more recent trend towards time-shift programming, DVRs, on-demand streaming services, has made the traditional concept of broadcasting virtually obsolete. Nevertheless, networks have not gone away. Instead, they've attempted to adapt to this changing media ecology by developing new marketing strategies that include eventizing television through the production of live musical spectaculars, which will be my focus today. Now, these spectaculars have been surprisingly successful in enticing audiences to watch programming immediately as it is broadcast. But they are also highly complex and ambiguous texts. On the one hand, they appear to reflect a nostalgic desire to return to the network era, which is romanticized as a time when audiences were more socially and politically unified. On the other hand, they also appear to extend this nostalgic fantasy to the modern era by depicting social media as a natural extension of early live television. So the following paper will examine this recent trend by exploring the complex and often contradictory relationship between liveness and nostalgia and authenticity in these texts. To what extent do these spectaculars reflect a desire for a simpler time when television facilitated a clear sense of cultural cohesion and collective identity? And to what extent are they informed by new media platforms that allegedly facilitate the same kinds of experiences for modern users? Are producers attempting to return to the social, economic, and institutional framework of the network era, or to reinvent network television for the post-network age? Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to be skipping a lot of the history. There was the musical spectacular begins in the early mid-1950s. And it was really responsible for solidifying television as something distinct from radio. And they achieved tremendous ratings. I think that the peaked in '57 was the production of Cinderella, a live production that had over 100 million viewers. And then, of course, this all ended. And there were no more musicals up until 2013, when NBC attempted to reverse their declining ratings by resuscitating this older tradition that they had started, the live musical spectacular. Now, their first new spectacular, which was broadcast from the December holiday season, was The Sound of Music Live, which was the first television broadcast of a live musical since 1957. And it was produced by Craig Zadan and Neil Marone, who hoped that it would become what they called another kind of entertainment that can exist on TV. They weren't just producing a musical, they wanted to create a genre, or essentially, for people who weren't aware of the earlier spectaculars, they might have thought it was a new genre, but they were attempting to make this a mainstay of network television schedule. Now, while this event primarily drew older viewers, it had a 10.3% share among viewers in the 50-plus bracket. It also attracted a 3.9% share among viewers between 12 and 34. And although it received some negative reviews, the production was a huge success for NBC with a total of 18.6 million viewers, which was the highest Thursday night viewership they had had ever since the era of must-see TV, when they had sort of control of that Thursday night time slot. You know, NBC's head of entertainment, Bob Greenblatt, subsequently signed Zadan and Marone to produce another live musical for the 2014 holiday season, and the following year they produced Peter Pan Live. This was the same exact musical that they had produced in '55, which had started the entire genre. Now, while the ratings were lower, they had about 9 million viewers. NBC remained committed to producing another one in 2015, and their third spectacular was The Wiz Live, which was obviously an attempt to attract African-American viewers. The viewership for the first two were predominantly older white people. And it was successful. It had about 11.5 million viewers. Now, by 2015, the other networks were beginning to take notice of this phenomenon. And the first network to compete with NBC was Fox, which aired Grease Live in January of 2016. Now, Grease Live succeeded in attracting 12.2 million viewers, more than the last two spectaculars produced by NBC. And it was also one of the better reviewed live shows. And part of its success came from its efforts to emulate the energy of a theatrical setting by incorporating the live audience into the production staging. So it was broadcast from Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank, California, and they used 2 different sound stages as well as the backlot. And they had live audiences at all 3 of these locations. And the director, Thomas Kail, explained that he wanted to capture the feeling of the audiences at live stage productions, as there was, quote, an energy and an undeniable vitality that real humans give back to real humans that are performing. This is really the big innovation of Grease. Now, the original musical not only reflects a sense of nostalgia for the music and fashions of the 50s, it's set in Chicago, originally in Chicago in 1959, but it also reflects a sense of nostalgia for the era of live network television, which made it an ideal property to adapt for this, for a live television musical. Now, the original musical, produced in '72, was set in Chicago, where DJ Alan Freed hosted live rock and roll concerts and appeared in a number of early teen films, including Rock Around the Clock from 1956. And in '57, he was also given his own live TV show, The Big Beat, which was a huge success and actually was the reason that ABC picked up Dick Clark's American Bandstand the following month. And Freed was inspiration for the character of Vince Fontaine in the musical. He's a celebrity who hosts his own fictional TV show that's called National Bandstand. And the climax of the musical features a dance competition that is broadcast live on this TV show. So I'm just going to show you this particular scene. Okay, so this is Vince Fontaine. Okay, I think you get a sense of the scene here. So all the people sitting in the bleachers, these are actual audience members who are now being recruited as extras to be in the show. And this scene was inspired by the teen films of the 1950s, which often featured these forms of live television finales. And this is a point that Thomas Doherty points out. The live TV climax was an often used means of narrative closure, which testified both to the powerful role the new medium played in the popularization of rock and roll, and to TV's centrality for the new generation. And the original musical can thus be understood as a response to the emergence of network TV and its promotion of teen culture, allowing teens to develop their own independent culture by speaking to each other, by showing them, by being able to see themselves on TV, which established their own sense of clothing style, their own musical styles and dancing styles. But in the television version of the musical, the live audience is also directly integrated into the scene as extras. In other words, the actual audience of a live TV show performs the role of the audience of a live TV show, which helps to emphasize this idea that TV allows teens to develop their own culture, actually incorporating them into the show itself. Now, as critics often point out, the original musical also presents a very idealized depiction of life in the 1950s, which was particularly attractive because it allowed viewers to escape the social problems that plagued the 1970s. And the film version of the musical has also been associated with the rise of postmodern nostalgia films, most famously criticized by Frederick Jameson, who reads them as a symptom of a decline in historicity, a failure to understand history and reducing the past to stereotypes and empty sort of styles, detached from any sort of political context. Now, Grease Live extends the strategy by depicting an integrated high school in 1959, long before this was actually feasible. So there were desegregation plans put in place in 1966 in Chicago, but the white parents were so angry that they were never actually implemented. And then in the 70s, there was this period of white flight where all the white residents left. And by the time desegregation was actually imposed by court order in 1980, there were really hardly any white students left in the public school system. So this is a complete fantasy of what high school would have been like in 1959. And I think this implication here is that this integration was made possible because of live television, because of this new teen culture that television was facilitating. Television becomes a force for social good, because live broadcasts not only facilitate communal experiences among these viewers, but it also fosters the integration of different social groups, an idea that is emphasized by the big finale, in which this group of multi-ethnic teens get together and sing the song "We Go Together," a classic song from the musical. And it's only in the live TV spectacular that this song takes on a new connotation through the use of through the depiction of an integrated school. Okay, so in an effort to compete with Grease Live, NBC's next musical was Hairspray Live, which also targeted young viewers by focusing on rock and roll music, incorporating live audiences, and emphasizing the importance of television to the development of teen culture. Now, this musical was based on John Waters' 1988 film of the same name, which is set in Baltimore in 1962. And the film revolved around a television program called The Corny Collins Show, which was a fictionalized version of the Buddy Dean Show, a local TV show for teens in Baltimore, which was on the air from 57 to 63. So like American Bandstand, the Buddy Dean Show was designed to showcase the latest styles in teen clothing and music, hairstyles and dancing. Waters was a huge fan of the show, mainly because he felt that it was teaching him how to become a teenager. That was the text that everyone turned to in order to learn how to become a teenager at that time. And like the Corny Collins Show, the Buddy Dean Show was also segregated. The station only allowed white teens to attend weekly broadcasts, with the exception of one Monday each month, Negro Day, when the show was hosted by a black DJ and the studio was filled with black teenagers. Now, in 1963, an integrationist group from Morgan State University challenged this policy by obtaining tickets for black and white teens to attend the show on Negro Day. And once this happened, it was a huge scandal. There were protests, there were bomb threats, and the show was immediately canceled. Now, the inspiration for Waters' film came from one of the performers on the show who attempted to downplay the problem of segregation by emphasizing its exclusion of overweight teens. Right? This performer said, "A black girl could have gotten on easier than a fat girl. No fat girls even came on to apply." Now, Waters' film focuses on precisely this scenario by depicting an overweight girl named Tracy Turnblad who dreams of becoming a dancer on the Corny Collins Show. And after achieving this goal, she then realizes that the show's policy of segregation is unfair and works to integrate the program. So unlike the protests that followed the real-life integration of the Buddy Dean Show, Waters' film ends with Tracy triumphantly succeeding. Once the show is integrated, everyone is happy and pleased, and she's a hero. So as with Grease, Hairspray represents a postmodern nostalgia film that obscures the history of the civil rights movement by depicting racial integration as the triumph of a white person. And for Waters, this whitewashing of history was actually intentional. He was attempting to make fun of message movies. But this message was lost in the musical version that was produced in 2002 and the film adaptation of the musical, which came out in 2007. Now, Hairspray was considered to be a particularly appropriate product for live television, not only because the story focuses on a live television show, but also because its celebration of tea-dance shows reflects an overwhelming sense of nostalgia for the network era. Like Grease Live, Hairspray Live also depicted network television as an institution that helps to foster a sense of collective identity among young viewers. And Hairspray Live also incorporated live audiences as extras by featuring them as screaming teen fans of the Corny Collins Show. And Hairspray Live even went one step further by featuring live audiences in multiple cities. Baltimore, Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Houston. And I'll just show you another clip here. Okay, so periodically throughout the musical, at 4 different intervals, there are these cuts to a host who then talks to these audiences at other locations. Okay, hopefully, if you've watched the New Year's Eve celebrations at Times Square, you'll recognize what they're borrowing here from. This idea of broadcasting the celebrations at Times Square at New Year's Eve really began on NBC in the 40s, where they were sometimes broadcast both on radio and television. And it was in the 1970s that NBC also introduced Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, where they incorporated the American Bandstand model and combined it with their New Year's Eve celebrations, which is exactly what they're playing on here through these, by incorporating audiences from different satellite sites. Now, this strategy was also enhanced through the use of various social media platforms that is referenced by the host in that clip, which gave users access backstage while the event was broadcast live on TV. NBC created a special Snapchat lens and story, Twitter hashtags, Instagram stories tied to the live show, and NBC's digital team also reached out to social media influencers and invited them to cover the performance. Now, the music itself only had 9 million viewers, which was actually the lowest of any of these musicals so far. But the network claimed that the 240 plus posts written by these influencers generated more than 3 million interactions on Twitter and Instagram, and more than 5.5 million interactions on Facebook, which resulted in a ratings bump for women between the ages of 18 and 24, and female teens between the ages of 12 and 17. And one of these influencers, Becca Pollock, even claimed that, quote, "The social media elements add another dimension to the show since we're all watching it together. It connects all of us, which is why social media is such a powerful tool." The network thus succeeded in convincing some young viewers that there is an inherent parallel between live television and social media, because they both facilitate communal experiences, the sense of we're all watching this together. But there are obvious problems with this theory, as network TV was fundamentally based on a transmission model of communication, one to many, whereas social media is many to many. It's fundamentally more diffuse. And social media is thus more closely resembles a radical expansion of narrowcasting than an actual return to network broadcasting. Now, Hairspray Live also included a series of live commercials for various products, including Oreos, Reddi-wip, and Toyota. And these commercials were modeled on early live TV commercials. But they were designed to solve the contemporary problem of how to advertise on TV in the age of DVRs and streaming services by blurring the distinction between program and commercial content. This is really the big achievement of Hairspray Live, is that it figured out a better way to advertise. And I'll just show you one of these advertisements. So this is Corny Collins making a plug for Oreos right after he's hosted a teen dance competition at the high school. And the key thing that you won't see is that during this dance competition, black teens and white teens have been dancing on opposite sides of the auditorium, separated by a rope. There's a dividing line between them. And you'll see them dismantling the dividing line while he's talking to the camera. Okay, so Corny, and he's the host of the show who is trying to have it become integrated. That's what he's fighting for. And his desire to integrate the TV show, coupled with the school's policy of forcing blacks and whites to dance on opposite sides of a rope, thus serve as a crucial background for the advertisement, as the juxtaposition of chocolate wafer and creamy filling become a metaphor for integrated dancing. In other words, even the commercials are imagined as a force for social improvement, as they do not promote consumerism conformity, but instead challenge viewers to accept integration, the integration of blacks and whites, which was clearly a fantastic idea, as networks and sponsors never really sought to promote this sort of social change in real life. Now, while there has been a gradual decline in the ratings for these events over the last 4 years, as I mentioned earlier, and it's doubtful that a single annual event will ever have a significant impact on networks' overall ratings, it's also clear that their primary value lies in their ability to promote network television by showcasing the cultural significance of live viewing experiences. It also appears that they've become a regular feature of NBC's holiday season, and they will most likely continue for the foreseeable future. Bye Bye Birdie is currently scheduled for this coming December. NBC has also begun to incorporate similar techniques into their scripted series. Following a live episode of Undateable in 2015, the series returned as Undateable Live during the 2015-2016 television season. However, it still remains unclear whether younger viewers are capable of feeling nostalgia for a period in television history that they never experienced firsthand, and whether they can become invested in this idea of network television as an institution that defines their own culture. And while the major networks are clearly attempting to use social media to reactivate and reinforce older modes of transmission and reception, it seems unlikely that networks will be able to exert full control over these platforms, which are fundamentally decentralized and anarchic. That's it. Thank you very much.